Today, we are talking dynasty values using the Keep Trade Cut tool to see where you can take advantage of all the different values that are going on right now in the offseason and how that value will regress to the mean, whether positively or negatively. That's right. We're talking buy sells today. Stay tuned. Welcome into the fantasy football universe. I am Jeremy Shulman at FF Rebel. Thank you very much for joining us. And today, if I can get our screen correct, and I think I just did, I'm the least technologically savvy of the fantasy football universe. I will welcome in Ryan at Ryan Pros underscore FF. Ryan Prosick, thank you very much for joining us. And just to give you a little bit of a background on Ryan, we worked together for a couple of years over at the Dynasty Vipers. Shout out to Matt Donnelly. Thank you so much for giving me my first platform. Ryan, I think that might have been one of your first platforms.
One of mine.
As well.
I counted as my first.
Yeah. And then, of course, moving on to the league winners, shout out to Tom as well over at the league winners for giving us that shot. Really appreciated working with Ryan, appreciated working with those guys for the last few years. Scott Fishbowl buddies for a couple years as well, and just loved for the last 4 years, is it now? I think talking ball with you all the time. So thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is long overdue getting us on a live stream together. It's about like 4 years too late. We were chopping ball every night during the pandemic because I was up to the most outrageous of times, and you're like, it's 11 a.m. for me. I'm sitting there at 4 a.m. We're just talking ball about everything. Good memories to look back on from a not so good time.
Yeah, it was a wild time. I mean, for me, it was COVID when I started to get into this, and just because we were locked down, I was just like searching for any sort of outlet to talk fantasy with people. And I was like, I have time now. I wonder where, I can connect with people who want to talk fantasy as much as I want to talk fantasy. And I found a community. Yeah, man, found a community on Twitter. Matt Donnelly was one of the first people who, invited me to join him, which was awesome. And then we met there working on Dynasty Vipers content for a while over to League Winners. So, yeah, man, it was a wild time. I mean, back a few years ago, it was, I was listening to Mike Tagliere when I first kind of got the idea that, like, man, this guy is awesome. I think that's cool. I think I might want to do that. And I listened to Mike every show, every chance I could. And that guy was on another level and such an inspiration to me and so many people. But yeah, that's kind of what it was for me in COVID, and just, to the point where we are today, where me and a couple of guys have started this, the fantasy football universe. It's been awesome. But Ryan, man, you've been there all the way for me, just chatting ball. So really appreciate you and excited to talk Dynasty with you. And like you said, our first show together.
It's overdue, man. It's overdue. It's long overdue. I'm excited. Yeah, awesome. We have some good names on the list today.
Yeah, we do. I mean, like, look, the first thing I think we need to do is we need to talk a little bit about Keep Trade Cut, because it gets such a bad rap in the industry, whether it's and even among common players, whether it's kind of screenshots of like the value on KTC is, is equal in this trade. Why do you hate it so much? Or just the fact that it's pretty much crowdsourced material. So maybe first, Ryan, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you view Keep Trade Cut and what you think about their values or their calculator, or, anything related to the idea of a trade calculator.
Look, the first instance I bring up a trade calculator, I brought one or two up, recently. It's when someone just offers me a trade and they're like, think it through, and it's like really unbalanced. I use it for unbalanced trades. I not to find values, but to say, hey, we need to come a little closer on this, and these aren't totally right, but it's kind of a crowdsourced thing, like you said, and it's a good benchmark for players getting into the game of Dynasty, I'd say. But for experienced players like us, it's just, it's just not really a resource, but something you could potentially use. But I see a lot of people shying away from it. Like I haven't used it much. And I know you haven't. It's nice to have crowdsourced dynasty rankings, but not all the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally agree with you. I mean, there's the thing is, when you get on, and I've had plenty of discussions about Keep Trade Co with lots of different people. And when you log on, you're asked to, basically rank these three players, keep one, trade one, and cut one. And through those rankings, I think I have it right here. There are 15 million data points right now, 15 million plus data points from KTC. So people kind of voting, to create this crowdsourced value and ranking system that we're going to go through. And that's a shit ton of data, right? That's really helpful to parse out. The problem is we don't know if people are taking this seriously. We don't know if anyone is super interested in, really kind of making sure that these are the correct answers, or they just want to get to the calculator, right? So because we don't know that, it's not necessarily information that we can rely on. But with 15 million points of data, you would imagine that some of that kind of coalesces and comes together. You mentioned the fact that you don't use it for necessarily that much anymore. I use it all the time. And, I used to be kind of ashamed by that because I think there's definitely a stigma attached to it. But I put out a thread on Twitter last week, I think, about how to weaponize using KTC. I really think that you can weaponize that data there because there are values to be had based on where the market views a player. And that's what we're talking about really is it's a market value, right? This is a stock market. This is what the market says this player is valued at versus where you have a player and how you think they're ranked. So for me, I like to be able to find the disparity in those rankings. We're going to do a lot of that today. And then what you can do is if you think a player's tremendously overvalued, you go out and, offer them in trades, and try and get pieces back that you like. If you think a player is tremendously undervalued, you go out and trade for them. So that's how I like to operate using it. But I agree with you 100%. Somebody sends me a BS offer. I'm like, how did they even get there? Let's check out KTC.
Yeah, it's more so like the 2-for-1, the 3-for-1, the 4-for-1 deals. Those are where you find the inconsistencies. The 1-for-1s and the rankings they're not bad at all. I just don't use it because I just don't really use any resources for that kind of stuff anymore. I just go off my own kind of thing. It's not bad to use for new players or like you to weaponize it for your own leagues to get value in trades. Like maybe I might start doing that now. You've inspired me in the first 8 minutes of the show. Maybe I'm gonna have to start doing that a little bit because there is value to be had all over the place. If you're not scrounging for value constantly, then what are you doing?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like one of the big names, and he's not on our sheet, so I'll mention him here. But T. Higgins for me, you see these guys who get these massive spikes in values just because they signed and are getting a little bit more money now than we assumed they were going to get. Ramondre Stevenson is the most recent example. T. Higgins from a week ago or 5 days ago, whatever it is at this point. Those guys get these value spikes. It's like, oh, T. Higgins is going to be with Joe Burrow again this year. Well, yeah, no shit. That was always the idea, except for some of these, he might get traded, maybe this. Ramondre Stevenson, the value spike makes absolutely no sense. He was always there. He was going to be there. Maybe you think that, the Patriots are more invested in him. But I always thought the idea that Antonio Gibson was going to take over that backfield was pretty ridiculous. So you see these spikes in value all the time and the market fluctuates. So you just got to kind of play what you think is going to happen and really be a day trader here, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And that Ramondre Stevenson extension makes me sad. I'm glad he got paid, but he was one of my most exposed players in best ball because I think he's just going to have a monster season compared to where he's going in these best ball drafts in like the 7th, 8th, 9th round. Mm-hmm. And, now it's not going to be like that. So,
well, you never know. I mean, the Patriots are. Oh, you mean it's not going to be like that for his value
for his ADP? It's already shot up.
Got it. Yeah, totally makes sense. So one thing I just want to do real quick, and I know we're running long already, but I just want to talk a little bit about KTC and the idea of what it is in terms of a market, right? So you have the market itself. Right, you have your market value of what the player is ranked as, I'm looking for my information here. I don't have it, but I'm just going to go off the cuff. You have your market value of what the player is. You have your kind of book value of what you are looking at in terms of, what your portfolio is of players on your roster and how this player kind of fits in to that scheme, where you're going to kind of generate value and points on a weekly basis. And the idea that all of these player values are fluctuating all the time, right? So if you think about, for example, your portfolio, that's kind of like what one of these like a Dynasty nerds or a fantasy pros, when they evaluate your team, and they have those tools that pitch you against the other leagues. That's kind of your portfolio put against other people's portfolios, but it's all projections, right? That's the thing. It's like fantasy. We're all dealing with projections. It's all hypothetical, right? T. Higgins is, my wide receiver, 16 in Dynasty. It feels a little high, but I can't justify moving him down just yet. But that's a projection of what he's going to do this season and into the future. If T. Higgins becomes the wide receiver 30 next year, obviously those projections will change and fluctuate. But you're betting more often than not that you can, beat that market value. And if you know where the market is at all times, and I think that's what KTC offers, if you know where the market stands and you have a good idea of where you stand on a player, you can always look for those edges in Dynasty.
Yeah, there's always edges to be had, even when you think there's not, because I don't know about you, but there's been countless times in the past couple of months where I log in, I see, on my phone, I'm just scrolling on Twitter randomly, and I see a notification. A trade has been completed. And you're like,
yeah,
wow, I didn't know I could have him for that little, or, that was a value, you know what I mean? You're just like, I wish I would have done more.
Exactly, man. You never know who you're playing with. It's always good to play with guys that you know. I've been thankful to have a core group of guys who, plays with me in a number of leagues. You're in one of those leagues where it's interesting. But there's also guys in those leagues, I don't know. They're friends of friends of friends, right? And when you get to that, you never know exactly how those deals are going to go down. But one thing's for sure, if you see a deal between a couple of friends, it's probably not collusion, but sometimes it definitely feels wrong. You're like, damn, what are you doing? How'd you get that? But I totally agree with you. But for me, KTC is kind of the go-to, because I'm just assuming that those values are enough to give me a good sense of the market and give me a good sense of where people are valuing that player. So with all of that said, let's actually get into the work. Let's see if I can do this seamlessly. We're going to try. Here we go. Oh, no. We'll put that there. We'll put that there. We'll put that there.
It's not your fault. Computer. Hey, look at that. Full screen. It wasn't full screen. We were doing this.
Look at that.
Look at that. Perfect.
Listen,
absolutely
somehow we get it done when it's crunch time. But let's talk about some of these dynasty rankings, and we're going to go position by position here. So we'll each give a quarterback, a running back, wide receiver, and a tight end. We'll look at their KTC value, and then we'll also talk a little bit about our rankings, whether we think they're a little too high or too low, and how it's going to operate for this season for them, and how those values might fluctuate. So again, just looking for those buys and sells that are available here. So Ryan, let's start with you. On our show sheet, you had an interesting name for a quarterback. I'm not sure if you think this is a buy or a sell, but why don't you tell us about who your QB is?
I'm a believer. I have him almost everywhere. But first off, I want to say this is a fantastic experiment kind of deal, because you use Keep Trade Cut a lot and I don't use it. So we're getting both sides of the coin here. So I feel like it's perfect for that. But we're going to Drake Maye, QB 18, right, at least when I put it in last night. He still is. That's awesome. So he's 49th overall, and I just think he offers such a value of upside. Rookie QBs, they could struggle, but we've seen QBs like Kenny Pickett, Zach Wilson struggle. And if they struggle the first year and you don't believe, you could easily get out for, you'll take a little value hit, but it wasn't that significant as I was looking at Pickett and Wilson's chart on Keep Trade Cut. And I just think Drake Maye is going to absolutely blow by this projection. You love to hear that as a Patriots fan.
Of course.
I think he offers tremendous passing, and he offers rushing upside that I don't think people, kind of account for. I think he could easily pass Jared Goff, Tua, Dak, Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, just looking at it right now. I'm going to be surprised if he's not valued as QB 10, 11, 12 by the end of the season, mid-season mark. If he gets going here, I know it's really tough to break into that upper echelon of QBs. And if he puts it together for 2 years or has a CJ Stroud year, he could do that, but I'm not. CJ Stroud year is, it's typically insanely rare, so I'm not even going to put him in that rarefied air. But I think we could see him creep into the QB1 market here, maybe 10, 11, 12. I think that's where I have him as upside projections behind, the typically elite guys that have put it on paper for year after year after year. But I like what they have in New England. I hope the coaching staff pulls through. I like what they're doing with the wide receivers. I'm a big Javon Baker believer. I don't know about you, but I'm huge. He's talked a lot of talk, and some of it's kind of crazy, but I like the confidence. And Demario Douglas is perfectly serviceable as a wide receiver. He did excellent last year, and we will see what Jalen Polk does. But I like the foundation they're building in New England. They got Ramondre to that deal we talked about, and I think he could be a low-end QB1 by the end of the year or even mid-year if he starts showing it on paper sooner than that.
Man, I love to hear that. I disagree completely. Look,
Wow.
part of this is as a New England fan, I am so burned by Mac Jones. I wanted Justin Fields, but that may not have been a good pick if he had fallen to us
They're turning
in
picks in
that
Madden
draft either. So look, it's just kind of a mess here for me. Drake Maye, I'm not bought into the fact that this team is going to be anywhere close to functional. I think they're projected to be the worst team in the NFL by record. That would not surprise me. They're at least bottom 3. That would not surprise me if they receive the number 1 pick overall next year. And that's kind of why I'm upset that we took Drake Maye at number 3. I thought we should have traded back or maybe go get Marvin Harrison. You suck again this year, and then you can get your quarterback of the future next season. If anyone thinks that Gerard Mayo is going to be, 75% of what Bill Belichick was holding this defense together, you're wrong. I know he's a disciple. He played in the system, but it's just, I like Gerard Mayo. But I just think that's more of a credit to Bill Belichick and what he's been able to do. So this team is going to absolutely suck, and I think that on offense, it could be better than what we had going on with Mac Jones last year. But I think to do that, Drake Maye is going to have to overcome a lot there. Look, he could rely on his rushing ability, right? He could be, kind of what we're certainly not as prolific, but what we're expecting out of Jaden Daniels from the rushing department, give you, 600-700 yards rushing for an upside projection and get up there. The rushing quarterbacks play in fantasy. We know that. I'm just concerned that this offense might not be able to move the ball, and other teams are going to be up big, dumping all over this defense and then just running the ball and grinding the clock out and just not giving them that much time. So that's my issue. I don't hate the player. I hate the game situation for Drake Maye and the New England Patriots.
See, just a little quick aside here. They could sit him. They could sit him all year.
Yeah.
I don't think they will, but Jacoby Brissett's there.
No.
And also about your 2025 comment, I'm going to have grades on Drake Maye, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams a lot higher than I'm going to have on the guys this year coming out, at least right now before the season starts. So I still think it was a good pick. I'm really high on the player. And every time I've been in that 102, 103 spot, I've just been acquiring future first, trading down to 105 and just smashing that ADP button on or smashing the draft button on Drake Maye and just been riding home to the bank. So I'm a big fan of Drake Maye.
I love it.
Really bright future for your organization there, Jeremy. Really bright.
Let's hope. I really hope so. I'll believe it when I see it. But we're going to move on to another quarterback here, and this is my pick. He's at the top of the list right here. Jordan Love. You can see that value spike and what we were dealing with last season. Obviously, he didn't play it down until last season. I think it was his third year in the league before he played a down of football. But Jordan Love came out and absolutely balled out after he understood his assignment, what was going on in the Green Bay Packers, got, some games under his belt and absolutely went nuclear toward the back half of the year. Even if it didn't show up on the fantasy sheet, it showed up in the eyeball test for me as well. Even in games where he didn't play his best, I thought he looked great. He's got a really good pocket presence. He has a good understanding of, checking off one receiver and moving through his progressions. And he's got a nice arm. delivers it with accuracy, and he's got the weapons and the scheme around him. So I love everything about Jordan Love. He's the consensus here. Quarterback 10. I have him at quarterback 7. I feel like that's too low. I have been taking him this offseason above Anthony Richardson. I am not ashamed to say that. I think Anthony Richardson is the darling here, and he's the rushing quarterback. I don't care. I love Justin Love here. I love me some Love as a QB6, QB7 in Dynasty. I think his stock is on the rise. And, at this point next year, I think he's being mentioned in the realm of CJ Stroud and everything that surrounds him as well as kind of one of these top young quarterbacks in the league. And I think it's very possible he could be a top 5 option. So I'm buying into Love everywhere. I think with Richardson, for me, the health is a bit of a concern. I like the player. I like the scheme there too, but I think the fact that he's taking those hits hurts him. So Love for me is a guy who should be higher than 10. If you can go out and get Jordan Love, I mean, I'm buying him up everywhere. What do you think about Love at QB 10? Ryan, do you think he's a value, or do you think he's someone that you should be selling?
Look, it's kind of funny because we're doing this buy or sell thing. I think he's just right, honestly. And maybe a little lower than consensus. Like, it's so hard to, like I said, with Drake Maye, to crack into that Jalen Hurts, Lamar tier that have just done it over and over and over again. I mean, his last year was fantastic, and I'm happy we're not playing this game with his wide receivers. Don't get me wrong, because that room is impossible to project at this point in the offseason.
100%.
But I think he could get a little higher. It's tough with 1 year of production. You only have that 1 year. You never know with these guys, but I think he's just right. I think we look back and he's QB 10. We're like, he has a QB 10, QB 9, QB 8 finish. We're like, okay, we saw this coming, and he's a constant in dynasty rankings for years to come at around this price point. That's at least my prediction.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Let me ask you a question, though. Where do you have CJ Stroud in your dynasty rankings?
Not QB3.
Okay. So
that's why I put him in the honorable mentions. Look,
go ahead. Let's talk about CJ Stroud, and we'll lump these together.
If you could scroll up for me real quick.
Yeah,
it's more so about the number on the right for CJ Stroud. Look at that number. That is insane. I've made one CJ Stroud deal this offseason. It was absolutely crazy. I traded away, a couple of pieces with CJ Stroud for a couple of firsts and Justin Herbert. It was absolutely ridiculous. But, to be a guy up there, you see Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. They all offer something with rushing, rushing touchdowns. Jalen Hurts has the tush push. Maybe Lamar goes for 100 a game. Josh Allen is just incredible. And then Patrick Mahomes is just the guy. CJ Stroud doesn't offer any of that. And you need to not have rushing, but if you don't have the rushing, you need to have prolific passing seasons consistently. And, I'm not knocking CJ Stroud. He's my QB 5. So it's not really that far off, but I thought we just had to mention him because he doesn't offer the same rushing upside as these guys up top. And, if he has a down passing game, he's not going to perform well. So
it's true. Yeah. Listen, I'm all about safety in terms of, floor for my fantasy players. In most cases, I want that safe floor, especially for elite guys. For example, I'll take a Tyreek Hill in Dynasty over, I wouldn't say Garrett Wilson, but I wouldn't say Amon-Ra either, but maybe over a guy or two there, maybe over a Drake London. I don't love that. But those guys there who are maybe a little bit more boom or bust options, because I'll try to think of a better example here, but I want somebody with a safe floor. And even though Tyreek's floor isn't safe, there's still a nice high floor for him. You just never know what's coming in. So those guys with the high floor, high ceiling, those are the guys who I usually attack early. I agree with you that Anthony Richardson, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, these are guys with high floors and high ceilings. I love that. The quarterback position, I'm kind of a fan of these guys who are actual quarterbacks who can spread it around, because what I'm concerned about, especially in Dynasty, is Josh Allen. I can't remember exactly how old he is off the top of my head.
28.
But
it has it right there.
28 years old.
Thank you. Keep trade cut. I wouldn't
Oh,
have got
yeah,
that.
exactly. So let's go there. So we got Josh Allen, who's 28 years old, Lamar Jackson, who's 27 years old. Jalen Hurts a little younger at 26, but at some point, the rushing ability is going to decline. And when that declines in Dynasty, is it 2 years for Josh Allen when he's 30 years old? It could be. And if that happens, we're going to see that value drastically decline because Josh Allen, for all of his NFL goodness, is not an exceptional passer of the football. He's very good, right? But I would argue he's not exceptional. And I would argue that CJ Stroud, Jordan Love have the ability to be exceptional passers. And like you said, they have to be in order to retain their value. But you're talking about, look, I don't think we should necessarily be looking more than 3 years out. I agree with that philosophy of 2 to 3 year window. But when you look 5, 10, 15 years, who's going to be left on your roster? Do you want Josh Allen when he's 33 years old? Or do you want CJ Stroud when he's 30 years old? Patrick Mahomes when he's 33 years old? These guys who are precision passers, who are only going to get better in that facet of the game. You got these rushing quarterbacks, but they feel a little disposable and like their career window is a bit shorter to me. So that's my issue here.
So would you have Justin Herbert higher than
I do actually. What is he ranked as though? Let's see.
QB9?
Cycling through windows here. I have Justin
So,
Herbert as
I
my
could
QB9, so he's right there.
Right there. See, like I wouldn't trade away CJ Stroud. Like I'm just bringing it up, talk about the rushing difference. If I get a really good plus for Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts, I'd think about doing it. The first that I got for Justin Herbert included, they turned into be Brock Bowers and Malik Neighbors. So at that point you have to do it. So it's just one of those things. I wouldn't consider for Joe Burrow for a CJ Stroud trade unless I get like a significant plus. Like there's the line, like a pretty good plus for Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and a significant one for Joe Burrow down. That's where I'm at with CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I feel you. I think a lot of people think he's undervalued. You just don't know for sure. But not this one. Uncle Ted says Anthony Richardson is going to ball out this year. I think so. I think his value is going to skyrocket, but I also think he's probably appropriately valued. What does KTC say? KTC says he's QB7. I have Richardson as my QB8, so I'm happy with his value there. I think he's absolutely one of those, that next high floor, high ceiling player in fantasy. The only concern is if this guy can stay healthy. We hope he can. I think at least right now he's a bit healthy. We just never know exactly what's going to happen. Such as this, it's possible that A-Rich gets smoked by Olakun. We're going to start a fight here in the comments.
Oh, geez.
You never know exactly what's going to happen here. But yeah, A-Rich is going to have to make sure that he keeps healthy. He said he's not going to change his style. Ryan, real quick before we move on here to what do we have next here? We have running backs next. Before we move on to running back, any concern about A-Rich and the fact that he's not changing his play style and could get injured?
I mean, there's always got to be concern, but he has such a big frame that you kind of want to ignore it a little bit. And you saw that fantasy upside in the 3 or 4 games he played. It's absolutely crazy. In fantasy football, you're always told, chase the ceiling. And Anthony Richardson, for his value right now, is the ultimate chase the ceiling play. If he has a great year and rushes the football well, that key trade cut value is going to be in the 9.5s right by CJ Stroud or low 9s, I think. So
100%.
Possibility to go very high up. It's got to take those risks, man. Got to take those risks.
Totally agree with you. And if Worst Sports Channel says that's Jack, I believe if I'm Shane Steichen, A-Rich is watching Russell Wilson game tape on repeat. Hopefully, I don't wish that on anybody. I'm not a big Sean Payton believer, but he didn't necessarily fit Russell Wilson. I don't know what's going on there. I think he's going to be fine in Pittsburgh, but fine is not necessarily something I want on my fantasy team. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But we are going to move on to running back now and look at some of the values. We see at the top, you got Bijan, you got Brees, you got the big names at the top here. But Ryan, who do you want to talk about as, I don't know, we'll see whether it's a sell or a buy for you. Who is your next running back here?
Oh, my next running back. We're going to stay on this screen. I'm going to talk about the Madden cover boy, Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he's amazing. He's fantastic. He's the 101. But you look at that dynasty value at 6.8K. You know, if you look at the wide receivers, which we're going to get into, about the same valuation for Garrett Wilson. And that's where it gets kind of scary. You have CMC at 28 years old. He's the ultimate bell cow, doing everything in the rushing and passing game. And, you know, Kyle Shanahan's offense was the perfect fit for him. I don't know. Looking back on it, some people were like, it's going to go wrong. And look at them now. I mean, it's one of those things that never went wrong. But I just think it's a little too high. But if I'm competing, I'm okay holding. But, like, if I'm in that, you know, that little window where you're like, maybe my team's going to be good, maybe my team's going to be bad, and you have Christian McCaffrey there and you're not an absolute juggernaut. I mean, an early first, I see that right there, right below his value. I mean, I'm doing that for Malik Neighbors or anyone up there, Marvin Harrison, 20 times out of 20. And it's just one of those things where I think the decline, it's going to be a little slower than most guys, but it's just one of those things where you got to hold them if you're competing. You got to get them off your team quick. And I don't think that's the value of his necessarily at that 6.8K, because even if I'm competing, if I could flip him for Garrett Wilson straight up, I'm doing it, honestly.
We got a question about what would you do here again from Jack. Would you flip CMC for James Cook and a 25 first?
No. I'm not high on James Cook, though.
Okay. Yeah. I agree. I have a fair amount of James Cook, but I'm not as bullish as some on James Cook. I think they're trying to kind of phase him out of the goal line.
Unless that 2025 first is like guaranteed 1 or 2, then Luther Burden and McMillan are going to be absolute studs. So
sure.
if it's guaranteed very high, I think about it. But like that roster has to be absolutely terrible. And if you're looking to acquire CMC with a 2025 first, odds are your roster's not terrible. So I'd say no.
Here's a point that my co-host Jesse Moeller makes all the time, is that you want these elite options in fantasy regardless of age, right? CMC is this one guy, and the reason he's so high on this list, he's this one guy who could absolutely break fantasy. He's done it in the past. He did it last year. He's in line to do it again in that offense with his skill set, as long as he avoids injury. So CMC is the Tyreek Hill of the running back position. You just plug him in, you forget it. Elite floor, elite ceiling. The only concern here is injury. And myself, I'm not kind of betting on injury. I think with CMC, he's proven that he can stay healthy. And that system is really interesting for him because it really does allow him to eat up as many targets as possible, but not immediately face stacked boxes or get crushed by linebackers who are reading plays. Shanahan, like you said, offers him that perfect system. So, I love CMC. He's my dynasty RB4. So I think he's appropriately valued here. And, I think he just got a deal, right? He's got at least 2 years.
He got paid.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's going to be there until the wheels fall off, I think. And, they're going to go try and win a championship.
This isn't where I'd go down in running back terms. I still am as 4. It's more so, like I said, with CJ Stroud, that number on the right's a little high.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, like,
it really is.
If I get one of those early top 4 guys in this year's draft class, if I could have done that, I probably would have if my team's in the middle. So it's just one of those things where his overall value, I like the players around him a lot more.
Yeah. Hard to argue with that, especially with this number here, which I can't highlight, but here, this 28 years old, he's beyond the cliff for running back value, which is usually 27. We don't care because he's elite. But let's talk about somebody a little bit younger here. It's Achane. You love him. I love him. He's not even 23 years old. He's an absolute dynamic monster in the backfield. And he's the running back 6 in Dynasty. I can't do it. He is elite. Whenever he touches the ball, he is going to go off. He can any game he is the Tyreek Hill of the running back position. Any game he can go off for, 130 yards and 2 touchdowns on 6 touches. I'm not debating it. It's the touches part that really gets me. Raheem Mostert isn't going anywhere. I think everyone has baked into Mostert's price this year the fact that he's going to get injured, right? Like, I don't understand that at all. We saw what he scored 21 touchdowns last season. Some of those are going to go back to Achane. I love Achane on my fantasy teams. I just can't pay an RB6 value for a guy who is used as sparingly as Achane is. And, this is a team with that should certainly make the playoffs. And, we'll see what that defense does. But for a team with playoff aspirations and fighting in a difficult division, you're going to want to keep this guy healthy as much as possible. And, they brought in Jalen Wright. So there's the possibility of kind of keeping Achane's touches down. Now, will he pop off? Sure. Is he a great best ball player? Absolutely. But I'm just concerned about this RB6 value. I don't get it. Maybe, Ryan, you understand, and you can kind of help me understand why we're valuing Achane, or at least KTC is, over Kyren Williams, Saquon Barkley.
I mean, I'm not in on Achane at RB6 pricing either, but it's one of those things where you look below him and you have cases, to be had that why he's above them. So I think he's in the right spot. It's one of those things where it's kind of hard to rank running backs when you take into age account, and then obviously running backs are drafted all the time. You have Blake Corum behind Kyren Williams. You have, not Saquon Barkley per se because he just got a new contract, but you have Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet down there. And it's just tough to formulate a value for these guys who touch the ball 6 to 7, 8 to maybe 10 times a game if they're lucky. But every time he touches the ball, it goes insane for 60, 70, 80 yards, it feels like.
For sure.
I mean, every time I'm playing DFS last year, I'm like, okay, I don't have Achane. I'm looking good. He has 2 points. I refresh the app. Oh, look at that. He has 24. It's insane. Ridiculous, but it's too boomer bust for me. And especially with Jalen Wright being brought in, maybe Raheem Mostert's workload is going down because he's getting up there in age. But we know Kyle Shanahan or not Kyle Shanahan, my bad. Mike McDaniel. I'm confusing San Francisco former coaches. They like to rotate running backs in. Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert. I mean, Jeff Wilson was a playoff winner 2-3 years ago there. So he loves to rotate backs, and I'm not paying RB6 price tag for a rotational back. I mean, ETN, if I get a plus there, I know they're even in KTC value, but ETN's going to be absolutely all over the ball. No real backups there to take much work from him. So yep. I don't like the price tag, but I could agree with it.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's my RB10, so I still love Achane. I don't know if I'm going to get him an RB10, but I have Isaiah Pacheco ahead of him just because those Chiefs, all the Chiefs are far too low in my estimation. That they're in for a massive bounce back. I think it's really going to be interesting to see how people kind of change their tune real quickly when Patrick Mahomes starts going off and the Chiefs start putting up 50 points on people. But that's another conversation for another time. Let's quickly round out our discussion of running backs here by a guy who I think, I know some would disagree with me, who I think has no business being this high. Your current KTC running back number, it's 11. Maybe it just changed. I think he was 10 when I got out. Number 11. Jonathon Brooks. What are you thinking about Jonathon Brooks as running back 11, especially coming off of that really difficult knee injury and coming into a situation in Carolina where, that team is just not good right now?
I like him a lot more than most, it feels like. I mean, I'm not really concerned about the knee injury. It was just an ACL. Carolina has upgraded their offense significantly. They brought in 2 guards in Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. They're going to do wonders for Bryce Young and this offense. Diontae Johnson is brought in to be an absolute target hog. I'm all in on him this year. I just think the offense as a whole is going to get so much better, and there's no competition for Brooks. You have Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard back there. I think Brooks easily runs away with that job. They spent a premium pick on him. Obviously, we won't know if Jonathon Brooks would have ever been on the Cowboys after Jerry Jones was talking crazy about him after night one of the draft. I don't know why that was a thing, but I'm in on Jonathon Brooks. RB11's a little too high for me, especially when we were getting him in the early second of some rookie drafts. There was a time there for a little bit. I know he creeped up beyond that, but you see the guys after him have, proven a lot in this league, and Isaiah Pacheco and Rashad White, I know they both have their concerns as well. It's hard. I'm in on the talent, in on the player. RB11 with nothing to show for it so far is just kind of hard, but if he has a good season, you know what happens to rookie running backs after a good season.
Oh yeah.
They're up there.
I could absolutely see it going that way. I think once he's deemed fully healthy, whenever that is in the season, and he has a command of the playbook, he's just going to skyrocket in touches. And I love the player. He was my RB1. If not for injury, he I hedged a bit and made him my RB3. He, vaulted back up to RB1 status at post-draft. With just a great landing spot. He's my RB16, so I still like the player. I still like the position he's in, but I have Derrick Henry ahead of him. I'm curious what you think about Derrick Henry here with, what I think could be more than 1 year of elite production here in an elite rushing offense. What do you think? Do you want Jonathon Brooks or Derrick Henry right now?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's like choose your favorite rookie or choose your favorite robot kind of scenario. Because Derrick Henry has the perfect situation. I mean, Gus Edwards got, I don't even remember the exact amount, but it felt like 1,000 touchdowns from inside the 5 last year.
Yep.
Those are all going to go to Derrick Henry now, and that should scare opposing defenses. I mean, if you get more than 1 year out of Derrick Henry, and you could promise me 2 years of RB1 potential with insane spike weeks, I think there's a conversation to be had that Derrick Henry might be the play there. I think I might choose Derrick Henry.
Yeah, that's my thought process with it is if he's more than 1 season there for you. And I think that's what we're talking about with all of these guys, right? It's the reason why Tyreek Hill is who we're going to talk about in a minute. So I won't go there yet, but it's the reason why all of these aging veterans are depressed in Dynasty. You don't know when the wheels are going to fall off. You don't know if they're going to have a catastrophic injury that's just going to end it all. But at the same time, you want those elite high floor, elite high ceiling players. And for me, Derrick Henry is it. Jonathon Brooks, like you said, we just don't know what he is yet. For as good as he looked on tape, we're going to have to see how he looks coming off of injury. It could be that he takes, a good portion of this season to fully get back to health. And he's not that all systems go back until next season. That's kind of where I'm leaning, but hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully we get an awesome season out of Jonathon Brooks. I'm just not willing to pay the price tag right now.
Mm-hmm. Rookie drafts looked a lot nicer than Keep Trade Cut has it. Because Jonathon Brooks was my guy in that second tier of players after you got the JJ McCarthy's and Xavier Worthy's of the world. Like maybe I was thinking about Brian Thomas, but right after that, it's like Jonathon Brooks is the no-brainer. So,
yep, same.
Rookie drafts
he was my 110, like locked in. I had 109 Xavier Worthy, 110 Jonathon Brooks locked in for me. And then I think it was Ladd 111. So yeah, totally agree with you. He was the unquestioned guy, but we're going to move on to wide receiver right now. Ryan, tell us who your wide receiver, fade or value is. Who do you like here against the KTC rankings at wideout?
Well, I really like a guy a little further down. I like your guy as well, Diontae Johnson. I just mentioned that. I'm spoiling a little bit here, but Tank Dell is my guy. I mean, it's kind of weird that I mentioned CJ Stroud, the honorable mentions with a little high of value, but I think he's going to be prolific. I didn't have him, significantly further down. I didn't say, oh, wow, CJ Stroud is not going to have a good year. I think he's incredible. I think Tank Dell, even coming back from that leg injury, it felt like he was CJ Stroud's guy. I know Nico Collins was incredible as well, and he got a lot of the targets along the way, but there's a video, I don't know if you've seen it. It was the was like the dream play versus dream offense versus dream defense on Bleacher Report with Micah Parsons and CJ Stroud. That man, CJ Stroud, mentioned a lot of great players, and also Tank Dell, who's a fantastic player. I just think CJ Stroud wanted him from the very beginning. I think he's undervalued at wide receiver 19. I think he was 20 when I did this, so it's happening to me too. He's 2 points on DK Metcalf. That's what it is. He just barely passed him out. I think we get several years of high-end production out of Tank Dell. Granted, he comes back from that significant leg injury. I just think he's going to be CJ Stroud's guy, and I'm not quite sold on Stephon Diggs after his down-the-stretch run last season, so I think that kind of depressed his value a little bit, and I think Tank Dell is going to be absolutely solid for years to come with CJ Stroud in Houston.
I totally agree with everything you said, except for the fact that Tank Dell is my wide receiver 25. I hate having him there. I love the player. I don't know how to move him up. It is my issue with Tank Dell. I don't know how to do it. And look, he might be the target hog in that offense, right? Like everyone's excited. Stephon Diggs is the shiny new toy in Houston. We don't know who's going to be the alpha there in terms of the number of targets. What I think it's probably going to be more rotational week to week. We're not going to know. These are great best ball buys, all three of these guys, Nico Collins being the third one. I don't really want anything to do with these guys in redraft. I think the answer is CJ Stroud, like you were saying. But if I have to choose in Dynasty, I'm probably going to end up taking the guy who's the cheapest. Right now, I think that guy is Tank Dell. It kind of fluctuates depending on where you look, between Dell and Diggs, right? Because so many people are still so high on Diggs. I just don't get it. I don't think he's necessarily lost a step. In fact, the coaches came out the other day, coach speak, take it for what it is, but they said that, Diggs looks fantastic. I think he's going to get plenty of targets, but the issue is long-term here. Tank Dell back to full health with his guy, CJ Stroud, who, like you said, got him drafted to the Texans, put him on the all-world, everything, all-time team that was constructing.
Bigger than coach speak will ever do for me.
Yeah, no, 100%, because this is the guy who's delivering the football, right? But I think Nico Collins is the better player. Nico Collins is going to deserve command targets once he really kind of is able to step out of that shadow that's been added now in Stephon Diggs and really become the alpha. And I just think Tank Dell really plays a primarily close to the vest check down option. He's going to get a ton of targets. I worry about his touchdown and his yardage upside. Just moving on. All of that said, he's still almost a borderline wide receiver 2 for me in fantasy. So I love the player, but the situation got murkier for me.
It definitely did get murkier, but I also don't see him losing a ton of value if the season doesn't go necessarily all that right for him. He still puts up a decent total fantasy point wise. Stephon Diggs getting older, they'll account for that. So I think this feels like kind of a middle ground, wide receiver 20 range for him. So I think it can only go up from here, not down, unless injury, but we don't project for those and hope they don't happen.
Well, and the other thing to consider is he's just 24.6 years old. So that's interesting. But another guy here who's a little bit older, not somebody I'll talk about, but someone Uncle Ted wants to talk about, is DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is always undervalued. I agree. I need to reconsider my dynasty rankings on Metcalf because I believe he's the alpha there for years to come. I'm incredibly stupidly high on JSN as well. I just think they put it all together there in Seattle. And, I really love DK to skyrocket this year. He's my redraft wide receiver 12. So I think he's going to have an absolute monster season. What are you thinking real quick about DK Metcalf? Do you think he's undervalued this year? Let me find out where KTC has him. He is just below Dell as the wide receiver 20.
I think so this year, but I'm also really low on JSN, so that also has a lot to do with it. I just think DK Metcalf, superior talent. We've seen him do it for years, and the new offensive coordinator from Washington, I believe, is going to do absolute wonders for him. And I think JSN as well. They spread the ball around a lot and 3 wide receiver looks at Washington with Michael Penix and all those talented guys that got drafted to the league. And I think DK Metcalf is going to play that Rome Odunze role. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, totally agree. I find it super interesting that you have the situation with JSN last season and Shane Waldron, who was the offensive coordinator there. But Shane Waldron leaves and Ryan Grubb comes in, and now he's going to operate JSN's going to blow up because, like you said, they have all these roles and it's very clear what's going on. Shane Waldron went to Chicago to coach Rome Odunze. And so what are we thinking about Rome Odunze? And, I think the argument is, is based on talent between the two wide receivers, JSN and Rome. But scheme is definitely a concern with those guys. And so I'm just super interested to see how it all works out in Chicago and Seattle. And if the problem was Shane Waldron or the problem was JSN or, maybe something else, I have no idea what's going on.
We're going to find out real quick, and it's going to impact some values, I think. I mean, if Keenan Allen gets the looks like we expect him to in Chicago, Rome Odunze might not be, all that involved. I think he's gonna be for where you picked him in the rookie draft. He better be if you spent the top 10 pick on him what the Bears did to pair him with Caleb. So it's gonna be really interesting, and we're gonna see the early returns on both teams, and I'm really excited for that. Underrated angle.
Totally agree. Let's move on to talk a little bit about, Tank Dell was my wide receiver 25 in Dynasty. My wide receiver 24 in Dynasty is Diontae Johnson. Diontae Johnson, an absolute monster. The guy can't get a quarterback to throw him the ball in the red zone, but he can get him to throw it everywhere else. He's a phenomenal talent. He works open with ease, and becomes the safety blanket wherever he goes. We haven't seen him go anywhere else until this season, but I think he's an excellent piece for Bryce Young to really rely on and, take over that Adam Thielen role. We were looking at this last week. I think Thielen had something like 130 targets last season, which is absolutely ridiculous for Adam Thielen, who is now who was 33, last season. 130 targets. Diontae Johnson significantly younger, as you can see here. Let me pull him up. He's way further down. Like the rankings, I have to go to the next page, I believe, to get to Diontae Johnson's. The rankings
I saw some names
are stupid.
I saw some names above him that I would just never consider above Diontae.
Unbelievable. Wide receiver 46. You should see the sleeper projections on this guy. It's like 650 yards, 65 receptions. I'm like, what are we even doing with Diontae Johnson here? The value is stupid. I could not have a keep trade cut show and not talk about Diontae Johnson. If you think this guy isn't going to finish this season as a top 24 wide receiver, I can't help you, right? Like Diontae Johnson is absolutely going to crush. He's walking into at least 120 targets in this offense. Maybe you don't like Bryce Young targets. I get it. But Dave Canales and company were brought in specifically to help the number one overall pick over CJ Stroud to kind of find his mojo, to really, orchestrate an offense that works for everybody involved. And their first course of action was to bring in Diontae Johnson to make sure that he can help to anchor this offense. Of course, we talked about Jonathon Brooks. Of course, they drafted Xavier Legette. But I think kind of the receivers that they have outside of Johnson and Thielen are just these big-bodied animals who, you hope can develop but are raw. And that to me is kind of just a fault of GM and maybe David Tepper getting a little too involved there. Legette, Mingo, Terrace Marshall, these guys are not guys who are going to command 130, 140 targets like Diontae Johnson can. So I'm all in on Johnson. His value is stupid low. What are you thinking?
Oh, I totally agree. You just gave me a little throwback scar there with Terrace Marshall. I was so in on that, man. The tape was there. He played alongside the greats at LSU. It's just one of those things. But if you saw the numbers that Adam Thielen was putting up down the home stretch last year, there was a couple of best ball teams where I'm like, why did I have Adam Thielen on it? And then I look, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's putting up numbers, Yeah. Diontae Johnson's going to do that, and some better head coach, better offensive line, like I was saying, better targets surrounding him. Xavier Leggette's going to be an upgrade to what they had. Adam Thielen hopefully still has some gas left in the tank. Jonathon Brooks is going to provide a lot more out of the backfield than Miles Sanders was doing for them on that expensive contract. I'm in on this offense, and it's probably going to burn me because it's the Carolina Panthers, but Diontae Johnson's value is just too low for me. I mean, you see A.D. Mitchell, you see Xavier Legette. I think they're both going to be good players in the league, but man, it's all set up for Diontae Johnson to have one of those monster target years like he did in Pittsburgh every year. And if the target quality is better than what it was in Pittsburgh, because don't get me wrong, it really wasn't good down the home stretch in Pittsburgh either with Kenny Pickett and company. If he gets good targets here, sky's the limit for this, man. I mean, I'm not going to say wide receiver 1 because it's so crowded up there, but if we see him as a wide receiver like 17, 18 at the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest, and you'd probably be laughing your way to the bank based on his dynasty value right now. Honestly,
yeah. And this is why I'm going out and getting him. I just wanted to find these numbers. I did sleepers projections. So right now he's their wide receiver 49. Their projections, which is baked into their ADP, have Diontae Johnson at 66 receptions for 690 yards and 4 touchdowns. Look, the touchdowns, 4 touchdowns maybe, but we're talking more about 106 receptions for 1,000 yards, 1,100 yards, and wide receiver 49. He's free if he's the wide receiver 2 that you can get that late.
I see those picks behind him. Those picks behind him right there, the 2025 early second. If you have one of those, probably mid at this point, or a 2024 mid second if you didn't do your rookie drafts yet, send them out. I mean, what's going to happen? They're going to turn you down. You might ask for a little more. I mean, Jameson Williams, if I could add a little plus on there to get to Diontae Johnson, if I'm kind of competing. Hollywood Brown's the only one where I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that. That's below him.
Yeah. About what do you mean? Be more specific.
I think he has the chance to outperform him in that Kansas City offense, but he has the perfect situation.
Definitely does.
So for this year,
totally agree with you. Yeah, you never know what's going to happen, but one thing's for sure: Diontae Johnson is going to get 100 targets in his sleep in Carolina, and I agree with you. Hollywood Brown is an interesting case, even though I'm an Xavier-worthy lover. That's more long-term play this year.
They could both get the targets. They could both get the targets this year. On deep balls, Patrick Mahomes gonna be slinging the rock.
That's it.
Texas and Patrick Mahomes slinging the rock.
We're running a little long, but I want to stay with wide receivers here because who cares about tight ends other than a couple? And I think I want to talk a little bit about Tyreek Hill here. He's the KTC wide receiver 13. Somebody please tell me how he's the wide receiver 13. He's my dynasty wide receiver 10, and only because he's old. There's no, excuse me.
You gotta go back to the first page.
To my other page
Johnson.
here.
Diontae Johnson did this.
Jeez, unbelievable. Diontae Johnson is not to blame. You keep that.
No. He's gonna be on this. He's gonna be on this page come next year.
So here's some interesting questions about Tyreek Hill. Yes, he's 30 years old, but he's an absolute monster. He should be, or at least he's my redraft wide receiver 1. I can understand if you have a couple guys ahead of him, but he's probably no worse than wide receiver 4 for you in redraft. I could see maybe wide receiver 5, but for me, if you don't have him in the top 2, I don't know what you're doing with him and CeeDee Lamb. I mean, these guys are going to have some absolute monster targets for themselves. I also love Jamar Chase. I think those 3 guys are a tier unto themselves, and Tyreek might be a tier unto himself just with the ridiculous amount of yardage that he's going to put up. He was on pace for that 2,000 yards that he was talking about all season, where people just blew it off and said there's no way it's going to happen. Then it was 150-yard game, 150-yard game, and 150-yard game and 2 touchdowns. And he was just absolutely going nuclear before he had that high ankle sprain or whatever it was he was rolled up on. It was just ugly. And he needed time to kind of recoup. And even still, he was on the field playing through it and looking good. So Tyreek Hill, for me, if he's going to put up a 2,000-yard season, if he stays healthy, I mean, he could do this He could do this for 4 or 5 years. The guy wants a contract extension. He's not going to retire. What are we doing here?
It's kind of crazy because I think that's why he's down a little bit. It's because he said he's going to retire. It's all out of it's all from him. Like,
so let me tell you this, because I just found this out. But this was a CBS Sports article from I think it was last November. Anyway, it was last year. It's 2023. It was either November in season or it could have been right before the start of the season. Tyreek walked back his retirement comments, and he was talking to the CBS reporter about the fact that he was in this weird place when he said that. His dad was like talking to him about longevity and health and life after football. And he said that really got in his head and started thinking. But he said in that very same interview that he feels like he can do this, for a number of years ahead. He's been talking now about contract extension. This guy's going to play another 5 years, I think. If he does, why is he not the wide receiver 1 in fantasy, right? So wide receiver 13 is wildly too low for Tyreek Hill. I think where I have him at wide receiver 10 is too low. I want to move him above Puka. I want to move him above Drake London. Marvin Harrison, interesting. So Tyreek Hill, he's old, but he's amazing.
He's old and he's amazing. It's just tough to crack. I don't necessarily agree with Puka because he just put up the best rookie wide receiver season we've ever seen in the history of the league. But there's a couple names up there where you're like, okay, I could talk myself into 2 or 3 years of this over, say, a Chris Olave, say his teammate, Jalen Waddle, say Drake London, Malik Neighbors, if you're not willing to, take the shot with Daniel Jones there. Then it starts to get hard because I'm a big believer. I think AJ Brown's too low. I think he should be up there in the Marvin Harrison range because he was on pace for a crazy season last year, and then the Eagles just fell apart, sadly. Whatever. In the rear view for me, but I think Tyreek is an incredible player, and no one offers the upside he does at wide receiver except maybe like 2 or 3 guys. And who knows if Justin Jefferson offers that this season with Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy coming in. I mean, we could basically assure that CeeDee Lamb is probably the only one that's going to get close, like you said, because Dak Prescott's just going to be feeding him target after target after target. But, there could be a holdout there coming soon. I don't know. But he deserves that money, and it's just crazy. That one comment that he said, what was it, 1 or 2 years ago, just tanked his dynasty value, even though he put up one of the best receiver seasons we ever seen last year.
Crazy. Go buy Tyreek Hill is the point. Look, maybe he retires. If he doesn't, or until he does, he's going to be an absolute monster, a guy you set it and forget it in your dynasty lineups, and he's going to give you the opportunity to win a championship. Few players do that by themselves. Tyreek Hill, Christian McCaffrey, maybe Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. That's
Travis Kelce before his decline.
Yeah, there aren't too many of those guys out there. Really quickly, because you mentioned Kelce, and we should wrap up with tight ends. But like I said, who cares? Let's just talk a little bit about your honorable mention in Jordan Addison. We talked about the fact that maybe it's a little bit concerning that for Justin Jefferson's value, the quarterback's throwing him the ball. So is that your concern here for Addison as well? Or do you think wide receiver 26 is too low?
I think it's too high. I mean, I see Lad McConkey could be an absolute target hog for Justin Herbert down here. I see Xavier Worthy. We talked a little bit about him. Jaden Reed, who knows how the targets are going to shake out, but he definitely looked like the most talented of the bunch last year. Rashee Rice, I know it's the suspension, but these are names that I'd easily take over Jordan Addison in Dynasty, and then Keon Coleman starts to get a little iffy there. But I take all those names over them straight up pretty easily. I like the talent. I don't like the situation. I don't like that his teammate just got $45 million a year to catch a football, but all the targets are going to go his way. And who knows if they're high quality targets. I mean, it should work out. Kevin O'Connell's an offensive genius. He's going to get the ball in Justin Jefferson's hands. It's just, is it going to be Sam Darnold? Is it going to be JJ McCarthy? And is it going to work out? Because if it doesn't work out, you're stuck with JJ McCarthy for a couple of years there, it feels like. And Jordan Addison's dynasty value is just going to plummet because of that. And I think there's less risk with these other guys because, like I said, Ladd McConkey is Justin Herbert. Xavier Worthy has Patrick Mahomes. Rashee Rice is also down there. So it's one of those things where I like the safety of the options behind him, and I also think they possess a bigger upside.
Totally agree with you. Jordan Addison, wide receiver 26 for me is far too high for him. Like you said, all of the points that you made, absolutely right there. I think he's a great player. I just don't. I'm not sure that Darnold or even in a O'Connell offense, that Darnold or JJ McCarthy can support two high-end wide receivers. And then TJ Hawkinson's going to be healthy at some point. So that's probably going to cut into Addison's load toward the end of the year. Moving on to tight end, I don't really want to talk necessarily about Njoku unless you do. I don't necessarily want to talk about Komet. I had him listed. I want to talk about Kyle Pitts. This is our boy, Ryan. Are you still in on Kyle Pitts? Let's go. Kyle Pitts, the tight end 5. The tight end 5. What are we? Kyle Pitts below Brock Bowers. What are we doing here, Ryan?
I don't know what we're doing. I think Kyle Pitts to the moon. I haven't gotten off the train. You know, there was many reasons for both of us to get off the train. We have stayed strong. We have been acquiring, and Kirk Cousins is here to save the day. And Michael Penix, you know, that's a whole other episode to beyond the point. But now he has a stable quarterback. He put up one of the greatest rookie tight end seasons we ever seen. Of course, Sam Laporta just threw that out the window. But yeah, Kyle Pitts is here to stay. I mean, the training camp videos didn't look all that great, but still, he's going to get the passing volume now. Kirk Cousins from Desmond Ridder is going to be like night and day. You're not going to believe it, how much it's going to improve this offense for Atlanta. I mean, most people do, but you know what I mean? It's just Kyle Pitts to the moon. We haven't gotten off. He's still 23. He's not even 24 yet. And he's putting up 3 seasons already in the league. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think he's going to the moon. We saw what Kirk Cousins did for TJ Hawkinson down the stretch there 2 years ago when they acquired him from Detroit. And now it's all systems go for Kyle Pitts. We've been waiting for this moment. Here it is.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. The fact that Brock Bowers is above him on the KTC ranks, I mean, Brock Bowers is a great talent, but that situation with those quarterbacks and with the coaching that they have there, not a huge fan in terms of the offensive coaching for sure, given what they did there in Las Vegas, and the fact that Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers are still there and going to soak up those targets. Brock Bowers, love the talent, don't love the situation. The situation for Kyle Pitts is insane. Just bring in a perennial all-pro quarterback, check. Try to improve the offensive line, check. And here's the thing that I really love about Atlanta's situation. You bring in Darnell Mooney, you bring in Rondale Moore. These are capable guys who can operate in certain areas of the field who are good enough to take away coverage, but not good enough to command targets. And I love that for both Kyle Pitts and Drake London. Those guys are going to continue to soak up the targets, where you have guys on the other side of the field who are good enough to kind of take away some of that coverage and avoid all these double teams for these big guys. I think for Atlanta, and I wonder what you think about this, I think Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts, one running back, one wide receiver, one tight end, not all at the same time, but all have the potential to be the number one at their position by the end of this season. I can't name another team that has 3 amazing players that are that good, that can, convert all of the opportunity that they have and be the number one at their position. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't know about Drake London. That's the one where I'm kind of iffy on. I love him, Fair. But I don't know if he's enough to crack into that. Do you mean the number one overall, or do you mean
at their position? Yeah.
At their position. Yeah, I don't know if I agree. I think Detroit has to be another one you got to throw in there. I mean, the running backs are kind of hard with how they split it, but Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra are fantastic.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a good one.
I think Kyle Pitts can finish as the tight end 1. I think Bijan Robinson, I have him as my RB1 for this season. I think he's going to absolutely go insane. But just Drake London where I fall a little short on that, but he's still going to finish as a wide receiver 1. I still have him as I think it was wide receiver 9 or 10 this season, something like that. So it's not like I'm down on Drake London. It's more so Tyreek Hill is going to go post 2,000 yards, and I don't think Drake London can do that.
There you go. That's fair. Totally agree with that. Let's talk a little bit about Sam Laporta. I'm assuming that you think tight end 1 because there's nowhere else to go but down. Tight end 1 is too high for him.
Yeah, I think it's a little too high. I mean, tight end's such a volatile position. He's a great talent. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking down on him. He's going to be fantastic this year and next, and in the future. But I think the ADP is getting a little out of control here. If you go by rank, he's an end of round 2 startup pick. Just absolutely crazy. I wouldn't pick a tight end there. It's just if you get an early first in a more stable position, say wide receiver Malik Neighbors, there's concerns with him as well, but it's just look to trade down. I would love to go from Sam Laporta to Kyle Pitts with a nice little plus. I'd love if I'm competing to go from Sam Laporta to Mark Andrews for a nice little plus. But, it's just one of those things where I think people bumped him up a little too high because you got to be patient with tight ends. You see tight ends on this list. Trey McBride, he didn't break out for a while. Dalton Kincaid, that beginning of the season there for him was really rough. And, you didn't have to be patient with Sam Laporta. He came right out the gate. First year, put up a tight end 1 season. I think he's a little too high. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I'm actually really happy with where he falls, but I don't find myself taking him. So I think I'm slightly lower. Like you said, end of round 2, he's maybe kind of a beginning of round 3 for me. For example, like this season, I'm looking a lot into the Scott Fishbowl rankings. Tight ends are massively overvalued there with the amount of points that they get. And I think I'm still going to go Kelsey over Laporta just for kind of that safety. I love the player, but there's just all of a sudden a lot of mouths to feed. I don't think, for example, Jameson Williams is going to negatively impact Sam Laporta's value if he gets more targets this season. But yeah, it's just kind of a matter of, for me, it's number 1, Jahmyr Gibbs' ascension. I think this guy is going to get all that he can handle. Number 2, Amon-Ra just being a target magnet and a monster out there. And Sam Laporta is going to be wide open, which will be nice. It's just he's going to have to continue that elite production from last year. And like you've been alluding to, we may have already seen his ceiling. I think he's got a high floor though. So I still do like the player, but yeah, I haven't been taking him much.
No, I haven't been taking him either. He's still got to be your Dynasty tight end 1 just based off what he did in his rookie season. Although there are some people coming for the crown with Kyle Pitts and Brock Bowers. If Brock Bowers can, elevate from the situation he has there, he's easily going to be up where Sam Laporta is right now. And, if you get a good plus for one of those guys, that's what I'm saying. I'd do that, but I wouldn't look to necessarily trade away Sam Laporta. He's 23 years old and he's proven to be great at the tight end position, which doesn't have many great assets, although it's starting to replenish a little bit.
Fair. Anything you want to say about David Njoku? I know he was your tight end value. I don't know if he's value. Maybe he's yourself.
He's a value. I think he's breaking out. I think, tight ends tend to play a little longer. I know he's based off athleticism and, that tends to go first with players, but I just think that last year was the sign of things to come for David Njoku. And look at his values going down. He put up a fantastic season and his value is going down. Not much real target competition was added. Jerry Jeudy was added. I'm not a big believer in him. Sadly, that's how it goes. But I just think Njoku is a great buy if you're contending because he could put up one of those monster seasons again. Evan Ingram, same thing. He had
That's my
felt
guy.
like 100. It felt like he had like 160, 170 targets last year with all the 3-yard outs that were coming from Trevor Lawrence. It's pretty close. So those 2 are my guys if you're competing and you want, a tight end that could give you week to week value and, not absolutely kill you there for a trade return.
Yeah, totally agree. I have a fair amount of Njoku. He kind of propelled me last season and a few of my teams to the playoffs to get me into contention, kind of out of nowhere. Evan Ingram for me, it has been that guy this offseason instead of Njoku, just because I don't know if the Joe Flacco effect is real. We'll have to see what Deshaun Watson can actually do on a football field for the first time in like 4 years, where he can, start opening day and then maintain the job. I don't really know what to expect there. It's been so long. But yeah, for me, Njoku is, again, we're talking about talented players here. I have no issue with the talent of David Njoku. I just wonder if Deshaun Watson can get him the ball as much as Flacco did.
Mm-hmm. I see Pat Freiermuth down there as well. I try to go up from Pat Freiermuth to either of these guys because I'm not sold in that situation in Pittsburgh. Obviously, Ben Sinnott is another discussion. I know he's your dude, and he got an excellent draft capital. I think he's a value down there as well. If I could do 1-for-1 Cole Kmet for Sinnott, if someone's believing in the Chicago offense, that's very crowded. Like if you could exploit some of these values like we were talking about. Yeah, there's a lot of value to be had down here. Ben Sinnott could be up with up in the tight end one discussion. Higher than Jake Ferguson, up in that Travis Kelce
higher than
range.
This guy. Yeah. Jake Ferguson. What are we doing here? I mean,
I'm saying he could be like top 60, top 70 in the rankings. If Ben Sinnott has a good rookie season, he doesn't have to have a Sam Laporta season. He just has to show that he's a productive, good tight end, and he'll be up there in no time.
Yeah, and I think Jaden Daniels is being wildly undervalued just from what he brings from a passing perspective as well. I mean, he's supported. We love Malik Neighbors, great talent, but we love Brian Thomas Jr. I don't love him. I'm warming to him. But I think that Jaden Daniels, why? We saw this with Devonta Smith. He's too skinny. He won the Heisman Trophy. Jaden Daniels won the Heisman Trophy. Why are we fading Heisman Trophy winners and saying, oh, well, he's just a rushing quarterback? We want to kind of dilute his skill set into just one. He's a great rushing quarterback. That's true. But Jaden Daniels, for me, is just an absolute monster. And I think he can support more than just a Terry McLaurin. Whether that's Jahan Dotson or Austin Eckler comes back to life here, I don't know.
Or Brandon
but
Ayuk.
I do like we'll see about that one. We'll see about that one.
But yeah, Jaden Daniels, I'm disgustingly overweight in best ball. His ADP is around 100. Like, that's easy every time. Just swipe draft. So it's gonna be fantastic.
I love it, man. Well, listen, Ryan, we've gone tremendously over time, but it was so good to talk to you. I really appreciate you coming, man. I really appreciate it. I mean, look, for me, I want to wrap the show up just by saying that KTC, for me, is a way to understand where the market currently is. It reacts to news. It reacts to the public, right? You get that kind of baseline value of where a player is. Then you have to kind of this is like playing the stock market. You use your judgment, you use the knowledge that you have, use your own personal beliefs and preferences about a player, and you create packages that might look nice on KTC, but that you feel like you are winning based on your values. So, feel free to use any trade calculators like this, especially ones, they all now kind of input this. If a trade is imbalanced, they'll give you like some random numbers that, right? If you do a 2-for-1, they'll give you like a random 3,000 point boost on the one side. It's like, what are we doing? Like, what the hell is that? We don't know. We're just kind of blindly accepting it. So, all right, I could go on about this forever, but I won't. KTC and other trade calculators, use them to your advantage, but they're just a piece of the puzzle. And I hope that you've seen as we've gone through some of these values here that those pieces are valuable in themselves, but they're not the be all end all thing that they are. So, look, the other thing I want to say outside of KTC is, Ryan, like we said at the top, it's been far too long that before we got on a pod. I'm so thankful that we were able to do it. I'm thankful for you joining me, talking a little bit ball. We should do this more often, maybe.
We should do this more often. Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah. You know where to find me.
Awesome. Well, I know where to find you, but how about telling anybody who might be interested where to find you, what you're up to, and how to get in touch, and if they want to talk ball, I mean, there's few better to do it with.
I appreciate that. You can find me on Twitter, or X as it's called now, at RyanPros_FF. I mean, I love talking. I've got a couple of DM requests in the past, few months. I love talking ball. They're like, give me an input on a trade. I'm like, I love doing it. So anyone wants to talk ball, feel free to hit me up in my messages. And, right now I'm writing for the league winners. Like you said, we kind of, we didn't reconnect there, but we kind of moved from there to there. So it's been an awesome journey, and I'm still writing there and writing about the Eagles, writing about best ball. I'm a best ball degenerate, so it's been a lot of fun, and big fan. Thanks for having me on. So I appreciate it.
Anytime, man. And just before we sign off, how many best ball drafts are you up to right now on Underdog?
93. That's not even
Nice.
That's not even degenerate at this point.
Listen, I was saying before the show started, I'm thankful that Underdog is not in Amsterdam. They've not come overseas yet, because otherwise I would be broke. But Ryan, I think maybe you might be broke or winning a shit ton of money. Maybe that's the other option. We'll go with that.
It's up and down. It's up and down.
Awesome. Okay. So thank you so much for coming. Let's see if I get it right. This guy, Ryan at
Nice.
RyanPros_FF. For this guy, I am Jeremy Shulman at FF_Rebel. Thank you so much for joining us here at the FFU. If you want to check us out, we're at fantasyfootballuniverse.com. We're on X, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. We're everywhere you want to be all the time, every day, daily content, all throughout the off season and into the season. We just started up in January. So if you enjoyed any of this content, please come and check us out. Please come and check this guy out on Twitter. And for myself, for Ryan, for everyone else at the FFU, we'll see you next time.